in September I'll be launching a much more active, if you like, fraud squad in terms of social welfare to ensure that social welfare gets paid to the people who need the payment.
How much do you hope to save on fraud savings?
I think the savings on fraud can be very substantial, because the big saving on fraud is not only do you catch people who are fraudsters, but you deter other people from slipping in to leaning on the social
before the election
system.
they'd save $1 billion on fraud. How much would you like to save on fraud?
Well, I think over a period of time you can actually save, and the Labour Party said the same. Over a period of time you can save on fraud. You'll have seen over the summer a lot more activity in terms of people being taken to the courts.
But you must have a target level that you hope to save.
Yes, and the target level is very significant. It'll be several hundred million per annum.
Now, the Department of Social Protection has confirmed that in the first 7 months of the year, 345 million has been saved by cracking down on what's called social welfare fraud. This news has created an almost hysterical reaction in parts of the media today. To talk about the reality of what's going on, we're joined by Andrew McCann, who's the author of an important book called Know Your Rights, foremost guide to people's entitlements under the welfare system. He also works at the heart of the system, providing citizens information over a huge catchment area based in Dublin. Andrew, good afternoon. You're very welcome to the programme. Now, the first thing I want to ask you about is, missed in all of this is the fact that large numbers of ordinary people are actually contacting the department, Joan Burton's department, and indeed her inspectorate, and basically informing them about suspect cases of abuse. The number of people making complaints has risen from 1,000 in 2008 to 12,000 last year, and it's growing and growing even further this year.
Yeah,
people want compliance, don't they? They want there is in the DNA of the Irish people. There's a thing against informing, but at the same time, they've now reached the point where they want to see the system implemented properly.
Yeah, exactly, Damien. I suppose we're seeing more and more of this situation because I suppose things are financially tighter for everybody at the moment, and some people don't want to feel as though their neighbours are getting a benefit that they're not entitled to. So that's why we're probably seeing a clampdown and an increased reporting, anonymous reporting of possible fraudulent claims, which would have been there in the good times, but not at the same volume. But now that things are tighter, and if somebody's in a financial bind, they want to make sure their neighbour is not getting one up on them in any way whatsoever, or one up on the system.
In the first 7 months of 2011, there have been 8,500 cases of informing gone through to the department. 2,500 of those relate to cohabitation, and 3,800 relate to people working while claiming at the same time. What's going on there typically?
I suppose if we take the first one, the cohabitation rule, I suppose it's one of the most difficult ones to prove, and I suppose primarily we're talking about here claimants in receipt of the one-parent family payment, and it categorically says that you cannot cohabit with somebody, and cohabitation is a very hard one to prove on the grounds that you would have to prove that you are sharing economic values, social and sexual sort of environment, so they're very hard to prove. And I suppose what would happen is the department would do an investigation, and on the grounds of the facts and the information available, they could either cease the payment, stop the payment, or inform the claimant that there's an issue of a complaint. And I suppose it puts the person in receipt of a payment under more pressure to ensure that they're compliant with the rules.
But the department is claiming that they've saved over 100 million in relation to what are called lone parent allowance cases. So it clearly, there's some of these claims are these reports are being acted on, and action is being taken.
Yeah, there are under that umbrella there would be other avenues that would be taken into account. For example, if a one-parent family if a parent is working and not declaring the income, that will be a savings to the state. Or number two, if there's issues of the father not paying maintenance or not paying enough maintenance, because there's a whole maintenance recovery section in the department trying to ensure that fathers are paying maintenance and not, I suppose, opting out of that option. So they will be all the savings under the umbrella, so the umbrella of cohabitation, working and maintenance payments.
Now, stigmatising a whole class of people in society, for example, lone parents, is a very unwise, possibly a dangerous thing to do. But there is a scam going on out there, isn't there, in some quarters?
Well, I think potentially it's very much open to fraud in some areas. I suppose the difficulty we have is the area of cohabitation, and I suppose the process is that as I said, the department have to act. They would act on any information they would receive. They would investigate the facts, and they would need to ensure they have, I suppose, substantial evidence to support the case. And probably what we're seeing at the moment is that if a department feels or believes that there is an issue of cohabitation, the first thing they will do is they will cease the payment. And unfortunately, in that case, it's up to the applicant themselves to appeal that decision. Now, appeals at the moment for a lot and all of the social welfare payments are taking approximately 6 months. So the problem is that in that case, somebody has to appeal it, wait for either an oral hearing or an appeal hearing, and present the facts to an appeals officer. And the appeals department is an independent body, so they would look at the facts independently.
Now, on an entirely separate issue, Andrew McCann, there's been a lot of legal action taken by Joan Burton's department in the recent past. I'll just read you some of the numbers. 90 cases were referred to the Chief State Solicitor's Office. This is of welfare fraud. 159 cases finalised in the courts. Fines imposed in 106. 4 people were actually jailed. 12 people got suspended sentences. 12 got community service orders served on them. People looking at this would say, good, this is right, the law's being enforced, this is the moral and correct thing to do, but why can't we do it in the other areas of white-collar crime as well? You know, they'll say there's one standard for the poor at the wrong end of the system and one standard for the rich, like rogue solicitors and people like that, you know.
I suppose, to be fair, in the welfare system, people will always be given an opportunity to admit a mistake, and what will happen is people will be given an opportunity to accept and put up their hand and agree to make the repayments by instalments or some sort of arrangement. So that will always be the first port of call, to accept the mistake and to repay the money. In more serious cases where that's not accepted, then further prosecution would take place. It is a very slow system. Obviously, there is a burden of proof required, substantial evidence needed. But if we look at the overall numbers, they're a very small percentage of the overall, I suppose, number of people on welfare and the whole welfare budget.
Yeah, but the point I'm making to you, Andrew, is that it is possible, when the authorities are willed to do it, to take action. They brought several hundred cases before the courts.
Yes, it certainly can be done.
And you say, obviously, it relies on people putting their hands up and paying back and so forth. But that's all good because it saves the public money.
Yes. No, it certainly can be done and has been done and always has been done. But we're probably seeing increased numbers of prosecutions and increased numbers of issues of repayments and in that situation. So it certainly can be done and has always been done, but it's maybe prior to this has been under the radar. But you know, I agree with you in your logic that there's certainly action has been taken for people in these situations, and you know, it should be more equitable and fair for other people to action be taken against people in other sectors. I'm
talking to Andrew McCann, who's the author of an important book called Know Your Rights about the welfare system. He also works in the community information system in a large part of Dublin. Andrew, I want to ask you about the information systems that are at the disposal of people like Joan Burton and her government department. Where are we at in relation to this? It seems there's a degree of chaos. There's 7 million people have PPS numbers. What's the state of our record keeping? Do we have an ID system, and what progress has been made towards having a national identity system? Well,
there are a number of projects happening behind the scenes. One is the proposed implementation of an ID card, which is going to be rolled out on a phased basis, starting with the pensioners and the pension scheme, and that was also one of the areas identified as one of the savings yesterday. I suppose there's also a proposed working group commencing shortly to look at the whole welfare system and looking at reforming it and reviewing it. So there is work happening behind the scenes. I suppose the difficulty we have at the moment is, number one, we have the issue of duplicate PPS numbers. So there needs to be a major review and other data matching or controlling of PPS numbers out there, because there are duplicate PPS numbers. Secondly, the welfare system needs to be maybe more connected to each other and connected with revenue, because we have a number of channels by which people can apply for welfare and different departments which they apply to, and there needs to be tightening in the areas of ensuring that there's no overlapping of payments or duplicate payments, and maybe tying it in with the more central registration system for births and deaths.
Andrew, should everyone not have an ID card? Because, you know, there's 2 million people in receipt of some form of benefit. There's rich people who are getting child benefit all over the country, and I mean, everyone should have one of these cards. in respect of all the claims they're in receipt of.
Yeah,
that's the only long-term solution, to have the whole thing computerised. It might be reprehensible in some people's eyes because of the whole Big Brother thing, but surely people should put up with that.
Well, I suppose on the child benefit system, because it's a universal payment, it's available to everybody, and that's a whole different argument because it's a universal payment regardless of your income and earnings. But I suppose to answer your second question, yes, I suppose we do need to move towards a more centralised and secure ID card system, which would hopefully in turn clamp down on the number of duplicate and fraudulent claims and ensure a more stringent system. So certainly it is a direction that we should move towards. I know it has been an issue over the last number of years which has been avoided, but it certainly is something that I think it's certainly been looked at now.
What do you think the current minister's attitude to it is? Is she on for an ID card system?
Well, from what I can see, I can certainly see a sense of reform of the welfare system. There have been a number of changes brought in by the Minister since her implementation, and a major review across all the payments, and there will be further reviews as far as I can see in the coming months across the whole welfare system. And she certainly is reviewing the schemes, how they work, how they're eligible and who they're eligible to, and a review of fraudulent claims. So there certainly is a change in mindset, and certainly a review and reform in mind for the department.
Well, you see, the whole point is this would not simply just apply to people who are, dependent on welfare payments. It would also apply to people who are doing work, that they would have to have carry ID cards and be prepared to show them, like if somebody is doing pieces of work here, there and everywhere, that they would be answerable or accountable in some way for all of that. If there was a universal identification system.
I suppose at the end of the day, if people have nothing to hide, there should be no issue. And I suppose if we're all compliant, and back to the primary conversation, is all about compliance and ensuring people are availing of entitlements that they're entitled to, and ensuring they're not getting paid for what they're not entitled to. And I suppose we need to ensure that everybody has a right and access to the fair and right information, and that we are compliant. And I suppose that's at the purpose at the end of the day what we're trying to do. And we're under pressure across the whole budget constraints to ensure compliance and reduce costs and budgets. So it certainly is an area, but we need to ensure openness and transparency, but we also need to ensure we're targeting the right people and targeting the right sector, and that people aren't being left behind who are entitled to it. Because what we're seeing at the moment with a clampdown in the welfare system is that there are being people cut off payments who may not, who are entitled to payments, and they unfortunately have to go through the appeals process, which is taking up to 6 months to do. So I suppose the wave of cuts is affecting a lot of people who should be affected and people who shouldn't be affected, and I suppose that's what we need to look at.
OK, Andrew McCann, author of the important book Know Your Rights, thanks for joining us. And Andrew works in the whole area of provision of community information as well, as you can gather. He's very knowledgeable on all of these subjects, but thank you very much for joining us here on Lunchtime.
Niall Collins, the Fianna Fáil TD for Limerick County, is on the line. Niall Collins, €345 million in fraud uncovered. Only 4 people went to jail, though. Are we under prosecuting here?
Well, absolutely. It was one of the figures which really struck me yesterday when I was reading through the analysis, and again this morning. I mean, certainly the volume of money that has been saved as a result of the fraud-busting campaign, I think is quite significant. But I think certainly we have to have a stronger culture of prosecuting individuals where it can be, sufficiently shown that fraud was the intent. I think we have to get the balance right between a lot of people apply for allowances and entitlements genuinely on the basis that they are entitled to them and that they need to avail of them. And often they are awarded those benefits and entitlements as part of the application process by the Department of Social Protection incorrectly. And on that basis, I think, fault will possibly lie on both sides, and those people may not entirely fall into the category of people who are committing fraud. So from that point of view, I think we have to look at the types of individuals and the cases, and certainly there is anecdotal evidence out there that not enough prosecutions are taken as a result of the amount of fraud that's out there.
We haven't gotten to the bottom yet of this discrepancy in the PPS numbers. I mean, we have only 4.58 million people in Ireland. We have 7.2 million PPS numbers. After a little bit of digging, we saved 345 million. Do you think there could be a lot more out there?
Oh, well, I think it's undoubtedly a fact that there is a lot more out there. The fact that you have a discrepancy of over 2 million PPS numbers in issue in the state, is of huge concern. And I think that's really where the department has to focus its efforts on. I think also we have to look at another angle on this. We have to look at the amount of the volume or the total assistance and social welfare payments going into a particular household. You will have lots of households out there that will be availing of support under various schemes, under 7, 8, 9, 10 different forms of social welfare payments. And when you add together the amounts of those monies, it in some cases can come to 70, 80, 90,000 euros worth of payments going into some houses. So we have to look at the total payment of money across all the schemes that are going into some houses.
Hang on, are you telling me that there's some houses out there that are pulling in 90 grand on social welfare?
Well, I think you will get clarification or confirmation of that from the Department of Social Protection, but there is anecdotal evidence out there, and you will come across it. And we came across it, I think, around the time of the debate this country had around the over-70s medical cards. There was evidence out there that some houses are in receipt of multiple payments going into it, which amount to large amounts of money, cash in the hand, and indeed, if you were to gross up that and put it into a working man's salary terms, you could double it. So we need to look at the total payment going into a house also. I think that's something which the department need to focus on.
There is a lack of joined up thinking. I think there's a general agreement on that when it comes to social welfare and the payments. Some departments simply just don't talk to other departments. One of the suggestions we had in the last hour was perhaps introducing some kind of national ID card that might help try and prevent fraud or duplication or whatever the case may be. Would that be something you're in favour of?
Absolutely. We have to have a national ID card. We have to streamline the application process also. I think there's a lot of duplication in the application process between the HSE and the Department of Social Protection. Essentially an individual should be assessed once by the state, and their details should sit on a centralised database. And then if that person applies for a different payment or a different allowance, their assessment, their means assessment, that can then be, accessed by the authorities straight away without having to go through all the rigmarole of reapplying, all the form filling, and all the staff that it takes to assess a particular application. We should have a centralised facility where, a person, is assessed once, whether it's for the HSE or the Department of Social Protection or for whatever form of payment that they're looking for, rather than having, if you're going to apply for 2 or 3 different types of support payments, that you have to apply 3 or 4 times, and you're assessed 3 or 4 times, and you have all the public servants and all the staff and all the hours that goes with assessing all those applications 4 times rather than once. But
Niall Collins, you don't necessarily need everyone in the country to carry an ID card around like some kind of Big Brother setup, when all you need is joined up thinking between the agencies that already exist.
What's wrong with carrying an ID card? I don't see any problem with it. You will have the civil liberties who'll be, we all have a passport. You go on your holidays, you carry your passport.
Yeah, but you're not required to carry your passport around with you all the time.
We carry our driver's licence. Let's have a common ID card. I don't see anything wrong with it.
A common ID card are fine, but do you have to carry it with you all the time, or is it only used for certain purposes? Where do you draw the line?
Well, look, we have to be, let's be practical about it. You don't have to have it on you, physically on you all the time. But if you need it for a particular item, well, then you have it available to you at short notice.
OK, Niall Collins, Fianna Fáil TD for Limerick County. Thanks for talking to us, Deputy Collins.
Thank you very much.